Welcome to Unlock the Code, the ultimate autism podcast. We help you unlock the mysteries of autism so your child can be successful in all areas of his life. With your host, the internationally acclaimed author, speaker, and autism and behavior expert, the CEO of Hope Education Services, Jessica Leichtweisz.
To bring different guests from different walks of life. Sometimes I bring you autism professionals in an area of expertise I don't have, so you can benefit from their expertise as well as mine. And, as someone who's been in the field of autism working for almost 11 years now, certainly I can bring a lot to the table in terms of helping you understand what it's like to raise a child with autism and give you some tips and some strategies on how to help your family. But one of the things that I can't do is give you some first-hand experience of what it's like to have autism. So oftentimes on this podcast, I bring people, adults on the show who had autism as a child, still have autism today, but have gone on to create exceptional lives and do incredible things. And tonight we're going to welcome someone on the call just like that who will share with you a little bit about what it was like as a child having autism. He has vivid memories of what it was like and what it felt like, what some of his most difficult challenges were that he overcame and how he has overcome them, so you can help your child overcome them using some of the same strategies, and how it's still autism does still affect him today despite the fact that he's thriving as a father and a pastor. This person works full-time in a medical field, and he's the professor of theology at a Destiny School of Ministry. He's on the advisory board of the Autism Society Faith Initiative of the Autism Society of America. He has a Master of Divinity from Oral Roberts University and is the author of A Parent's Guide to Autism, Practical Advice, Biblical Wisdom. One of the things he's passionate about is God and the Bible, and I love that as well. So he's memorized over 10,000 scriptures, including 22 books of the New Testament, which is just amazing. I remember when I was studying for ministry myself, and many of you don't know that I am an ordained minister as well, and I don't talk about that aspect of my life much on this call because I do believe in keeping that separate from this business out of respect for everyone on here. But I do also get excited to find someone who's done that, because I know for me I had difficulty just memorizing the one book I was assigned to memorize. But he's done that. He's excelled in it. He's a speaker and author. He speaks in many colleges and conferences, autism centers. He also is a husband, and he's a father. And it's just incredible things that he's accomplished, not allowing autism to take control of his life, but, why finding a way to use it to his strength and to really give back to the community and create an amazing life. It's a privilege and an honor to welcome Ron Sandison on the call tonight. Welcome, Ron.
Well, thanks so much for having me on your podcast tonight.
No, it's my pleasure. And, I've been following some of your work. We first met on Facebook, and then, we got connected on LinkedIn a little bit while later. And I had listened to some of your sermons, and it was really exciting for me. And I thought it was amazing. I had heard you do some speaking a little bit about autism. And at the time, I didn't realize that you yourself have autism, and you were diagnosed with autism as a child, and you accomplished so much. And, it's like many people, you look at them today and you say you would never really know that they've had these struggles. And, for parents on this call, a lot of our parents that are listening to this call, their children were just diagnosed with autism. And I wanted to bring you on just to show them what's possible for their child. So I just want to jump right into things. Ron, you were diagnosed with autism a little bit as a young child. I don't know your exact story. Share for our listeners when were you diagnosed, and how did that come about, and what was that like for you?
So my development began normal. I said my first word, mommy, at 9 months. Then at 18 months, I went through the time of regression. 20% of all people with autism will go through a period of regression. So I went being able to say mommy to only mom. And I went from being able to have eye contact to zero eye contact. And I lost my ability to interact with my environment due to the autism. And my mom knew there was something drastically different between me and my brother Chuck and Steve, who were older than me. She immediately took me to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician said, men are like fine wine, you got to give them time. And women are like flowers, they develop quickly. And my mom knew that time was the essence, so she immediately got me intense speech therapy. I was in intense speech therapy all the way from age 2 to age 16. And my speech development was so far delayed that when I was 7 years old, my brother Chuck would introduce me to people saying, you need to meet my brother Ron. I think he's from Norway because he speaks Norwegian. And he'd have me talk, and no one could understand what I was saying except for him. So I became an expert on Norwegian languages. And when I was 7 years old, they wanted to diagnose me in school as emotionally impaired because they saw that I had zero ability to interact with other children, very little ability to communicate. And my mom said it's not emotional, it's neurological. And she had Henry Ford Hospital test me in 1982. And when they tested me, Dr. Delgado, he came back to my mom and said, your son has autism. And when I was diagnosed, only 1 in 10,000 children were diagnosed with autism. Now it's 1 in every 59 children.
Yeah, now from those numbers, and I do want to bring this up and ask you your perspective. And parents, one of the things parents ask me every single day, I get the question is, are more kids just getting diagnosed, or are those numbers really changing? And, I always say from my perspective, and I want to hear your perspective, I always say, well, it's a little bit of both. So if you look and listen to your story, it's not uncommon. A lot of the parents, or a lot of the adults who have autism I've heard on this call, they weren't diagnosed at a young age like kids are being diagnosed today. There was a lot of confusion and mystery and a lot of misdiagnosis. So from your perspective, just, off topic for a minute, what do you think about those numbers? Do you think they really were 1 in 10,000? Do you think that it's 1 in 59? Do you think it's our environment? What is your answer for that?
My answer is this, is that we ask the wrong question, so we'll never get the right answer. The question isn't what causes autism. The question is what are the contributing factors of autism. And if we ask what are contributing factors of autism, we can get an answer. But if we ask what causes autism, we'll never get an answer because there is no cause of autism. There's only contributing factors. So part of it, I think, it's both. I think better diagnosis tools make a higher number of people we can diagnose with autism. Also, you follow the flow of money, you're going to get more autism diagnosis. So now someone who would have been diagnosed something different in autism, since there's funding for resources for autism, they're going to diagnose him with autism. So the funding's there to get the child the need and the help that he needs. And I think that the contributing factors, there's an old saying, we are what we eat. And you look at all the foods, all the preservatives, all the stuff we're allowing into our environment, that's affecting our bodies, that's affecting the whole way we develop. Even you look at girls, they're having their first period at a much earlier age because of different hormones that we put in our food. And all those foods are going to affect us also. Second, the age we have children. In the 1960s, 1970s, most people had their children between ages of 25 and 28. Today, people are having children much later in life, and they find that the older the male is compared to his wife, the more likely there are of autism. So the age we're having children. Also, the different chemicals and stuff that are in the environment, not just necessarily what we eat, all that's contributing to a higher amount of things that can add to the autism diagnosis or the contributing factors.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that you're saying, and obviously the specific, like you said, the causes, what factors contributed in every case, it can vary, and we don't really know an answer, right? That's why billions of dollars are spent on research every year. That's why autism is still, signified by the puzzle piece. That's why, even at the logo for this show, we're talking about unlocking the code, solving that puzzle, and helping families figure out that mystery. And you made up a valuable point. It's, asking the right questions. And, for us, one of the questions, like I said, that I get all the time from parents is, well, what is my child experiencing? What is my child feeling? And, one of the great things about having you on the show, Ron, is you can communicate what it felt like, and you remember what it felt like having autism as a child. So can you tell us a little bit about, your memories of having autism, how it affected you, how you felt, so parents can have a little better understanding of what their child is feeling?
I like to say most people are like bottled water. They get shaken up, stirred up, not much is happening. I'm more like carbonated Mountain Dew. I get shaken up, stirred up, kaboom. And with me, my sensory issues are heightened higher than most people's. I remember the first movie I saw as a child. I was 7 years old, and I went to see a Maxwell Smart movie. And Maxwell Smart, for younger people, is a character later on who they based Inspector Gadget on. And when I went to that Maxwell Smart movie, at the very beginning of the movie, there was a glove, and it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the glove exploded. And when the glove exploded, it ended up making me explode also and go running around the movie theater. And I think autism really makes us, since we're heightened to our environment, we become like our environment. There's a story in the Old Testament where the Israelites come to bitter water, and they become bitter. Moses comes to bitter water, and he makes it sweet. And I think with autism, a lot of times, our environment, we become much like our environment because we soak in so much of what's going on due to our heightened awareness. I also remember, too, in college.
So, going through those challenges as a child, what was the most beneficial things in overcoming that? And obviously today you've achieved a huge degree of success. And, one of the things we talked about is that a lot of times you think about, okay, you didn't fit in with kids, you had all these social problems, they thought you were had emotional impairments, you had these sensitivities, these sensory sensitivities, and you wound up working with people. You wound up being a pastor, being a minister, preaching and talking to people every day. So what was it that got you to that place? What were the most helpful therapies that you received? Who were some of the people in your life that really influenced you to become the amazing man that you are today?
The most helpful person and helped me overcome autism was my mom, because she never gave up on me. She was an advocate. She always said, advocate, and then your child become an advocate. So she worked directly with me. She saw that I wasn't learning anything by learning phonetically, and the school system wanted to teach me phonetically. In fact, they said to my mom, even when they saw I wasn't learning phonetically, let's teach them 50% using visual and 50% phonetic. And my mom said that 50% phonetic won't do anything. So she got the school on board to help me learn everything visually. And by able to learn visually, I was able to overcome having dyslexia. I was able to overcome many of the difficulties I had with learning to read and write. And through learning how to read and write, I was able to publish 2 books and also be able to graduate from college and have a master's degree. So I think the key to my overcoming was my mom, but also using learning methods that I could learn. Temple Grandin says that 90% of people with autism are visual learners. Only about 5% can learn phonetically. So I think knowing what area the child can learn and focusing in on those areas is key to bringing success. Also, success came from me by having mentors throughout high school and college who taught me social skills and taught me how to interact with people in appropriate ways and be free to be willing to interact, because a lot of times with autism we want to isolate ourselves, and by not isolating myself I was able to overcome. And athletics was a key to my success because 80% of people with autism suffer from severe anxiety and depression, and by being involved in track and cross country, it was able to bring up my endorphins and also make me have positive feelings about myself and be able to feel better even when there was depression. By running, it helped the depression go away.
That's incredible, and I'm a runner as well. And I don't have autism, but I think all of us have our struggles, and all of us, have to some degree. We all go through that depression and go through those limiting beliefs. And I think that I've probably learned more, and I've done a lot of personal development and personal growth and just business growth, and I immerse myself in trying to be a better person every day. I think I've learned more from running and just being on that field than anyone else or anywhere else, and really from anyone else, just learning from yourself, learning from God. I think that getting your child involved in sports and especially for people with autism, team sports are great if that person can do that. But a lot of times parents think that kids can't, just because they can't do team sports, they're not going to ever be able to be an athlete. And I know running, and I've actually interviewed Carla Champ, who was a Special Olympics gold medalist she's a runner and she does ultra marathons like I do. And it's a really amazing way for people with autism to really be able to cope and really to learn about themselves and push themselves to the next level. So did you have that experience with running?
Yes, I found that running really built up my self-esteem. It also made me feel better just from going out there and running and giving me purpose and being able to win major races, be able to run in the state finals, be able to run in college, build up my self-esteem, and also made me feel good inside after completing the run. It made me feel more in touch with my environment, and it also caused my sensory issues to go down a lot too after running, so they weren't so heightened.
Yeah, now that's one of the techniques that I know occupational therapists use, and then as a behavior therapist, we always are using what we call antecedent modifications before working, or we're really giving sensory stimulation, sensory input to people to help them to cope better. And any sort of physical exercise for many kids is really, really helpful. Now, for some kids, it can backfire. It can actually be overstimulating, but contrary to what some people may think, sometimes heavy moving around, whether it's jumping on a trampoline or whether it's going on a swing or just running, sometimes just letting someone run. I have children I work with that are toddlers, and they have a lot of energy. They won't sit at a table, and it may seem counterintuitive to let them run around for 2 or 3 minutes and then bring them back to the table. You'd think they would be, more stimulated and have a more difficult time focusing. And for some kids that's true, but some kids it really can help them focus as well. Ron, you talked about developing this sense of esteem, sense of self-worth, and I already alluded to this, where you chose as a man with autism to go into a profession where you're interacting with people every day. You're not just sitting behind a computer and crunching numbers. You're putting yourself out there, and you're doing things that many people say that people with autism can't do, and obviously they can, and you're proof of that. And for parents that are listening to this call, it's an inspiration to them. What made you choose into a profession where you're interacting with people every day?
What made me choose my profession, working in the mental health field and also as a professor of theology, is I felt a call to that. My senior year of high school, I started memorizing the Bible and memorizing Bible verses, and I started speaking in churches. And then through speaking in churches, it opened the door for me to go on to get my master's in theology. And then also I started working in the mental health field in 2004 when the economy went bad. I went from being a youth pastor working full-time to working in the mental health field, and I've been working in the mental health field ever since. And I found that working in the mental health field, seeing people who are what we call abnormal psychology-wise or in their behavior, makes me realize the natural behaviors are what we consider more acceptable or the norm. And I think that's really helped me a lot, is working in the mental health field. People are less judgmental who have mental health issues, and that's helped me to be able to connect with them having autism. And also we get many patients who are on the autism spectrum because people with autism usually have more mental health issues. They say it's as high as 80 to 90% higher for people with autism to have mental health issues in the general public. So I find that really helped me to learn and understand myself better by seeing how people interact, and then seeing too inappropriate ways of interacting that some of the people display as patients at the hospital.
Yeah, and, so for you, do you still find that, obviously you're successful in what you do, you're speaking, you have books published, do you still find, though, that you struggle with your autism? Is that something that you've overcome it, but is it still part of your life, or is it something that you've completely eradicated from your life?
No, there's still areas I struggle in. I struggle a lot with anxiety and fear of the future. And I think that with autism, my fear of the future is much higher than what typical people are. Like, I'm going to be flying out in November 4th to Austin, Texas for a film premiere, actually the 3rd, but the 4th is when the event is, and I have fear of flying alone, fear of getting to the airport, and stuff like that, where most people, after they've flown a bunch of times, have no fear of getting to the airport. I have no fear of flying, but getting there and then finding the right terminal and where to go from there and making sure that people are there to pick me up and all the sequences, I still have trouble in following sequence of order. So it makes me more nervous than most people. Most people would be afraid to go up and speak in front of 6,000 people. And when I spoke at Rob Parsley's church in Columbus, Ohio, I spoke in front of 6,000 people, and I have no fear of doing that. But sequences, I have to follow this step to get to this. And driving long distance to go to an event, when I'm driving, I find it very nerve-wracking because I'm always afraid of getting lost, and more than even speaking in front of the audience, I'm speaking it. So it's more sequence events. Also, I get a lot of sensory issues where when I speak, I always have a spinning ring so I can step in front of everyone. No one can notice because I have my ring from Israel that has Star of David, and it spins so I can spin the ring. So I think it's more of those types of areas. Plus, you suffer from self-doubt. Even though I have 2 published books, even though I got a master's degree, even though I'm married and have a daughter, I still have self-doubt. I sometimes wonder if I'll get any more speaking engagements, even though I speak at 70 events a year, where most people, when they start getting into a groove of something, don't start worrying about things that are illogical. But with autism, we still worry about things that are illogical and think that things could just change out of nowhere, even when we're in our zone, like Michael Jordan slamming, dunking.
It's interesting how I think all of us have these little fears. I started with this brand new client today, and some people who, I've been doing this for a really long time, they'll say, hey, are you nervous starting with a brand new client? And I said, there was a spider on their deck, like trying to get into their house. And I was terrified of this spider. I had no fear over starting a new client, but it was the spider that got me. So it's interesting how, through everyone, sometimes, we look at someone, we stigmatize them, say, okay, this person has autism. We all are human. We all have the same emotions, the same fears, the same little hang-ups, and it does vary from person to person, what a person makes a person happy, what makes a person anxious, what makes a person, have sad, what a person is interested in, what they're not interested in, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. It's incredible that we look at see how we're different, but I think really it comes down to that everyone's more the same, I think, than we are different. And it's really interesting to hear you say that, and just knowing my own stories and knowing my personal successes and struggles. It's really not all that different than yours.
And one of the things, too, I just thought of that makes me very unique is I hate change and routine. And to this day, I hate change and routine. Like, for example, when my wife's going to have people over, we're going to do something, we have to line it up with my routine. Every day when I get off work at 4 o'clock, I begin my memory work at 4 o'clock and do my memory work till 6:30, and I can't let anything break up my routine of memory work. And that makes it hard if they want to try and mandate me to work extra hours because there's not enough staff for the afternoon. It makes it very high anxiety for me because then I can't do my memory work and it breaks my routine, and I hate things that break my routine. Where most people, it's no big deal if they have to work an extra shift, they just go through it. But with me, then my whole anxiety level is 10 times heightened than what the average person was. And then when my daughter was born, my parents were going to change my man cave at their house, which is into her nursery. And Autism wanted, they kept my man cave, and then their guest room became the nursery. So things like that are very hard. I had a meltdown,
it's
and then
interesting.
they decided not to wreck up my man cave where I have over 4,000 books and have everything from my childhood. I have over $6,000 worth of calico critters and boxes in that room, and all kinds of toys from all over the world. My prairie dog collection of over 40 different prairie dogs.
Wow, that's impressive. That's an impressive collection. I know I still have a lot of toys from when I was a kid too. It's amazing. But you talk about really just having your change, it being really high anxiety for you. A lot of times, I try to explain to parents that kids with autism, some, not everyone, but they have a lot of rigidity. And a lot of the kids that I work with, the parents will see the kids getting really, really upset. And I'll say, it's not that they're being naughty, it's not that they're being bad or they're being non-compliant when they're getting tantrums or where it looks like a tantrum, but when they're getting really emotionally upset or something changing. And I can never really describe, I can only kind of explain to them that that's part of autism, but I can't really describe what it feels like. And then you talk about, a change being really just very difficult for you to cope with, even after you've managed to have a huge degree of success in having a child and becoming a husband and a teacher and a professor and a minister and writing books. How does that feel? Like, if you could explain to us just how it actually feels when your routine is disrupted.
It feels like your mind's going blank. It's like when you do a lot of stuff at work and you've been working real hard, and then you just feel exhausted and your brain feels like it's just can't think. But it's like where your whole brain goes blank. Like when a computer crashes, I think that's the best way to describe it, is that I start the room starts moving quicker, and I begin to not be able to think rationally, and my brain will go numb, and then I just can't take anymore, and I start breathing heavily, and with a real bad meltdown, like as I had a kid, I remember one time I had to have surgery, and when they put you out with the oxygen so they can do the surgery, it felt like that, where I couldn't remember what was going on. I remember one meltdown I had because the teachers thought I was behaving inappropriately when I was like 6 years old, so then they locked me in a room, and I remember kicking at the door, screaming, and it just coming in on me, the door, and spinning, and then not being able to think at all, and just use up all my energy until I had no more energy and passed out. And that's how I think best to describe sensory issues when they lead to a meltdown. Everything moves in so close, and then you feel like your brain's going dead, and you feel like you're losing all your energy, even though you have more energy than you had before.
Yeah, I mean,
but from an inside point, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like you're losing energy rather than gaining energy.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear you describe that in your own words. And I've witnessed many tantrums, and I've witnessed many meltdowns, and I know that they're different. That when a person with autism is having a meltdown, that's not the same thing as them having a tantrum and them, refusing to comply, or the typical, 2-year-old on the floor who wants candy for dinner. It's totally different. So, thank you for describing that in your own words. We're getting to the point where, we try to keep all our calls around 30 minutes just to be respectful of all of our listeners. If there was any final advice that you could give to parents, who are raising a child with autism, something you would wish that all the people in your life knew, from your experience growing up, what would that be?
It'd be this, is that autism can be very challenging, and that just because someone seems to be high functioning on the autism spectrum doesn't mean that they're not going through issues with autism, whether it's depression, whether it's change in routine, or confidence to succeed in the areas that they want to succeed in. So my advice is that always offer help to people who are struggling with autism, and always try and build that person up.
Wow, that's some really, really great advice. And it's something, like you said, every day one of the things parents talk about is that their kids who are high functioning will say, oh, they don't look like they have autism, but it doesn't mean that the child's not really going through their own set of struggles and, really every day. So being sensitive to every child's need is just important. So thank you so much for sharing that, Ron. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, if they wanted to get your book, how would they do that?
So my 2 books I have out is A Parent's Guide to Autism, Practical Advice, Biblical Wisdom by Charisma House, and you can get that one at Barnes & Noble. It's also on Amazon. And then my newest book that just came out is Thought, Choice, Action, Decision Making that Releases the Power of the Holy Spirit. And that book you can get at Amazon. And if you put Thought, Choice, Action, it comes right up. And also they can contact me at Sandison456hotmail.com. And I can give links to my books. Also, I have a website, spectruminclusion.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. It's been a pleasure to have you on our call. And to all of our listeners who listen in tonight, if you're listening to this for the first time, we put all of our recordings on parenttrainingvideos.com as well as unlockthecode.info. That is our podcast, but we do a lot of other videos as well. If you like this podcast, you might want to check it out. Also get in touch with our company on Facebook at Hope Education Services, and head over to hopeeducationservices.com. I have free ebooks that you can download under the free resource section, and I'd love to give them to you as a gift just for listening to the end of this call. Ron, thank you again. Make it an amazing evening, and it's just been a pleasure to have you on, and you are an inspiration to me and to all of our listeners.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on. It was great being here. Thanks.
My pleasure.
This has been another great episode of Unlock the Code. Unlock the Code is a division of Hope Education Services, one of the world's leading companies where parents can learn about autism online. For even more great content, head over to hopeeducationservices.com today and join our list so we can send you our VIP content and you never miss anything that can help your child succeed. Love our podcast? We would love a 5-star rating on iTunes and Podomatic. Thank you for allowing us to help you unlock the code of autism. You are not on this journey alone. Together, we're going to make a great team.